Every civilization in the galaxy is about to die. Not from war, not from famine, not from the slow collapse that empires suffer when they grow too proud to listen. From something no one can explain. Something that leaves stars intact and planets whole and every structure standing, and simply removes every living thing inside them. No wreckage, no bodies, no last transmissions, just absence, spreading outward through the galaxy like a tide that has never once been stopped. By the time anyone understood what was happening, 12 systems had already gone silent. At first, no one noticed. The night sky above the outer colonies still looked the same, cold, scattered, indifferent. Ships moved along their routes. Trade signals pulsed between systems. And life continued with the quiet confidence of civilizations that had survived long enough to believe they would keep surviving. Then the signals started going silent. Not all at once. That would have been easier to understand. Easier to accept. Instead, it happened the way rot spreads beneath polished wood. Slow, uneven, almost polite. A mining outpost in the Persei Belt, home to roughly 40,000 workers and their families, failed to check in on a Tuesday. Command assumed a relay failure. They sent a diagnostic ping. Nothing came back. A maintenance crew was dispatched. The crew did not return either. Then a research station orbiting a red dwarf stopped transmitting mid-sentence. Its final data burst cut cleanly between two words, as though the universe itself had decided the rest of the sentence was unnecessary. What those two words were, no one recorded. Perhaps no one wanted to know. A week later, an entire colony of 2.3 million people went dark. No distress call, no debris, no radiation spike, no gravitational anomaly. No chemical trace in the atmosphere, just absence. And the kind of absence that did not behave like destruction, because destruction always left evidence. Evidence meant an explanation, and an explanation meant a response. This left nothing, which was somehow worse than any wreckage could have been. At first it was dismissed. Systems failed. Communication relays glitched. Human error filled in the gaps where understanding could not reach. But then the pattern emerged. It was subtle, buried in layers of navigational data and long-range scans that no single observer could see in full. A drift in background radiation here. A faint distortion in subspace telemetry there. Individually meaningless. Together, they traced a shape that moved. A wave. It advanced slowly enough to be almost imperceptible, crossing interstellar distances with a patience that suggested it had never needed to hurry and had never once been interrupted. Systems it passed through did not explode or burn. They simply stopped. Stars remained. Planets remained. Structures remained. Even the coffee cups on the counters of a station kitchen in the Arlen cluster remained, sitting exactly where someone had left them, but the hands that put them there were gone. Life did not survive it. Nothing complex did. Nothing that thought, or breathed, or hoped. The first time someone mapped the wave completely, they thought the data was corrupted. The second time, they thought it was a coincidence. The third time, they stopped thinking that. By then, 12 systems had gone dark, representing a conservative estimate of 400 billion lives lost. 400 billion people, beings, families, histories, erased as cleanly and completely as a name rubbed from stone. In the observation chamber of the Lumen Orbital Station, a projection hung in the air like a wound carved into reality. A vast stellar map, each point of light representing a system, a civilization, a history. Across it, cutting through constellations and trade routes alike, a deep violet distortion advanced in a slow, perfect arc. Behind it, gray. Not darkness, not emptiness, just stillness. Captain Armin Richlow stood near the edge of the chamber, arms folded, watching the projection as if staring long enough might force it to explain itself. It didn't. Around the curved table, representatives of 7 civilizations sat in a silence that was too controlled to be calm. The Marin had drawn close together, their translucent forms trembling at the edges. The Davari stood rigid, their stone-like bodies locked in postures that suggested endurance rather than hope. The Valta refracted the station's ambient light into fractured patterns across the ceiling, their shifting geometry betraying a tension they would not otherwise show. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Elder Olin stepped forward. The Lumen did not rush. They never had. Their species had evolved in a world where time was abundant and urgency was considered an inefficiency. Even now, as entire systems vanished without explanation, Olin moved with the same measured deliberateness. That, more than anything, made the room feel wrong. The acceleration is confirmed, Olin said. Their voice carried a layered resonance, each word arriving with a harmonic depth that seemed to settle into the air rather than pass through it. A gesture, and the projection shifted. The violet wave advanced. Not quickly, not violently. Inevitably, at its current rate, Olin continued. The outer rim colonies will encounter the phenomenon within 40 years. The core systems within 80 years. No one reacted immediately. 80 years. For the humans in the room, that was less than a single lifetime. For some of the other species present, it was barely a heartbeat. For the Lumen, who regularly lived 3 centuries, it was perhaps 2 generations, a span short enough to name, long enough to pretend it was someone else's problem. But the silence that followed was not the silence of calculation. It was the silence of recognition. The kind that arrives when a truth is too large to process all at once, and so the mind simply stops. Richelieu felt it pressing against him. Heavy, unfamiliar, cold. He understood what the projection meant. Understood the numbers, the projections, the inevitability implied in the data. But he could not feel it the way the others did. He had been raised on a world that had nearly ended more times than history cared to remember. Extinction, to him, was not an abstract concept. It was Tuesday. He looked at the wave again, at the slow, perfect curve cutting across the galaxy, and felt something that did not match the fear in the room. Not denial, not hope, something sharper. A question, because whatever this was, it did not behave like anything he had ever studied, fought, or survived. And that meant one thing. No one in that room understood it. And if they did not understand it, then whatever decisions they were about to make were guesses dressed in the formal clothing of policy. He uncrossed his arms. And for the first time since the briefing began, someone in the room looked away from the projection. The silence did not last. The preservation protocols must begin immediately, said Svakith, the Valta representative. Its crystalline form shifted as it spoke, light refracting sharply across the chamber. Cultural archives, genetic vaults, continuity records. If the phenomenon cannot be halted, then what we are must be carried forward. A murmur followed, not agreement exactly, but recognition. Several representatives inclined toward the idea with visible relief. Preservation was something they understood. It implied structure, planning, control. It implied that even in the face of annihilation, something could be managed. The Marin representative made a soft, rippling sound. We should begin evacuation modeling. Prioritize dense population centers. If movement ahead of the wave is possible, we may reduce total loss. Movement where? One of the Davari asked, its voice deep and steady as bedrock. The wave crosses interstellar distances. It does not respect borders. It does not slow. You would run until you reach the edge of the galaxy. And then what? Then we would still be alive, the Marin replied, its form tightening. Barely, said a representative from one of the smaller coalition species. We are discussing how to endure extinction, not how to prevent it. That shifted something in the room. The conversation tilted, almost imperceptibly, from fear toward acceptance. Not surrender. Not yet. But the shape of it was there, like a door easing open in a dark hallway. Plans formed quickly when the outcome was assumed. Data models were proposed. Resource allocations. Timelines measured not in victory, but in delay. The Lumen spoke in terms of continuity and record. The Valta focused on structure and the orderly transfer of what could be saved. The Marin thought in clusters, in movement, in the comfort of proximity. Each approach made sense. Each approach assumed the same thing, that the wave could not be stopped. Richelieu let it continue for a while, long enough to understand the pattern, long enough to be certain it was not going to break on its own. Then he spoke. Can we discuss stopping it? The words were not loud. They didn't need to be. They cut cleanly through the layered conversation, not by force, but by contrast. Every eye in the room turned toward him. Compound, faceted, fluid, luminous. 7 civilizations, each with histories stretching back thousands of years, looking at the youngest species in the room as if it had just said something mildly embarrassing. Richelieu was used to that look. He stepped forward anyway. We are planning for failure, he said, before we have established that failure is inevitable. Svakatha's structure shifted, light tightening into sharper angles. The data suggests. The data suggests we do not understand what this is. Rishlo cut in, not aggressively, but without hesitation. We do not know its origin, its mechanism, its limits. We do not know if it can be slowed, redirected, disrupted, or if attempting to do so accelerates it. The Davari finished, calm and immovable. Ignorance is not a strategy. It is a risk. Everything is a risk, Rishlo said, including doing nothing except documenting our own extinction. That landed harder than he expected, not because it was aggressive, but because it was accurate. The Marin shifted uneasily. Even the lumen's soft light dimmed by a fraction. Elder Olin regarded him for a long, unhurried moment. Captain Rishlo, they said gently, you are proposing intervention without understanding. That is not caution. That is impulse. Rishlo shook his head. I am proposing that we do not treat this like something we have already lost. He moved closer to the projection, closer to the slow violet arc cutting through everything they had ever known. How many of your species have faced extinction-level events? He asked. Not war. Not collapse. Not resource failure. I mean the kind of event that removes most life from your world. 70%. 80. 90. Silence. Earth has done it 5 times, he said. That got their attention. Even those who had been deliberately avoiding his gaze shifted, focus sharpening. He brought up a secondary display, a simple timeline marked with 5 deep fractures. The first was 445 million years ago. The Ordovician-Silurian event wiped out 85% of all species on the planet. The second, 375 million years ago, the late Devonian extinction, 75% of species gone. The third and worst, 252 million years ago, the Permian-Triassic event, 96% of all marine species, 70% of all land vertebrates, erased in what geologists now call the Great Dying. The fourth, 201 million years ago, the Triassic-Jurassic event, nearly 80% of species lost. And the fifth, 66 million years ago, an asteroid impact that ended the age of the dinosaurs and restructured all complex life on the planet. He let that sit in the air. 5 separate events, he continued, each one severe enough to end what existed at the time, each one leaving the planet fundamentally changed. And each time, life did not stop. It adapted. It rebuilt. It found a way through conditions that should have made continuation impossible. Svakatha's voice came sharp and precise. What you describe is not resilience. It is statistical accident. Random survival under chaotic conditions. Maybe, Rishlo said, but the result is the same. He looked around the room. We are here. That simple statement hung in the air longer than any technical explanation could have. Not an argument. A fact. A fact that had no logical right to be true, and yet stood in front of them wearing a uniform. The Davari shifted slightly, a minimal movement that still carried weight. Your world survived because it was unstable, it said. Violent. Unpredictable. That is not a model for controlled intervention. Exactly, Rishlo said. A few confused looks. He let it happen. Every civilization in this room, he continued, has built itself on stability, on eliminating the variables that threatened long-term survival. And that works. It works beautifully, until something shows up that does not follow your rules. He gestured again to the wave. That thing does not care how stable your system is. It is not interacting with your strengths. It is testing something else. No one interrupted him now, not because they agreed, because they were listening. If we assume it cannot be stopped, he said, more quietly now, then we never even look for a way to stop it. We just organize our own ending more efficiently. Elder Olin was still for a long moment. Then, slowly, they turned back to the projection. When something has never been encountered before, Olin said at last, there are only 2 possible errors. To underestimate it, or to misunderstand it. They looked at Rishlo. You are suggesting we risk both. Rishlo met their gaze. I am suggesting we already are. The room felt quiet. But this time the silence was different. Not the stillness of acceptance. Not the paralysis of fear. Something had shifted, not enough to change the outcome. Not yet, but enough to make one thing uncertain. Whether the story they were telling themselves was actually true. The meeting ended without resolution. Plans for preservation continued. Committees formed. Stopping the wave was not dismissed, but it was filed somewhere between low probability and theoretical interest. Richelieu had expected that. What he had not expected was the message waiting for him when he returned to his quarters. It came through a secured channel, marked with Lumen authorization. No subject line, no preamble, just a set of coordinates and the words, "Come alone." The Lumen did not send messages like that without reason. Their private chambers were known as still rooms. The name was not metaphorical. The moment Richelieu stepped inside, the noise of the station seemed to fall away, as if the walls themselves absorbed motion, sound, and the restless background tension he had not fully noticed until it was gone. Elder Olin was already there, their forms softly luminous, colors shifting in slow gradients that suggested thought rather than emotion. "Captain Richelieu," Olin said. No formal greeting. No acknowledgement of the earlier discussion. Just his name. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was deliberate. "You believe we are approaching this incorrectly," Olin said. Not a question. "Yes," Richelieu replied. Olin's colors shifted faintly. "You speak with certainty for someone who lacks information." "I speak with concern," Richelieu said. "There is a difference." A pause. "Explain it." Richelieu leaned lightly against the edge of a low platform. "You have had 11,000 years without a major disruption," he said. "No war. No large-scale collapse. Nothing that forced your species to rebuild from the edge of failure." Olin's light dimmed slightly. "We have maintained stability, yes. That is not an advantage right now," Richelieu said. The statement hung there, stark and unsoftened. "When a system is stable for that long," he went on, "it becomes very good at preserving itself under known conditions. It eliminates unpredictability. It reduces variance. It optimizes." A faint shift of color from Olin, something that might have been agreement. But it also loses something. The ability to deal with things that fall entirely outside those conditions. "You believe we are unequipped," Olin said. "I think you are untested," Richelieu said carefully. "In this specific context." Olin was quiet for a moment that stretched longer than most humans would allow it to. Then, "In all our records, we have never encountered a spacefaring civilization that survived a mass extinction event on its homeworld and retained a path to sentience. There is significant debate among our scholars regarding whether such a thing should be considered statistically viable at all. And yet," Richelieu said, "here we are." Olin studied him with a precision that felt less like observation and more like reading. "Your species evolved under conditions of repeated catastrophic reset," Olin said slowly. "Each time rebuilding from diminished states. Each time adapting to environments that had fundamentally changed. That process would favor flexibility, redundancy, rapid adaptation to unstable conditions. Survival, basically," Richelieu said. "Yes," Olin said, "but not survival as we define it." "How do you define it?" "Continuity," Olin said. "The maintenance of identity across time. The preservation of knowledge, structure, and self." Richelieu considered that for a moment. "Humans do not really do that," he said. "Not perfectly. We change. A lot. Sometimes faster than is probably healthy. Cultures shift. Systems collapse and get replaced. We lose things and reinvent things and improvise constantly. We are not good at staying the same." Olin was silent. "That would be considered a weakness." "Usually is," Richelieu agreed. "Until it is not." Another pause, longer this time. "There is something else," Olin said. The tone had changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. This was no longer theoretical. Richelieu straightened slightly. "Go on." Olin moved toward the center of the room, their light dimming to a more focused, contained glow. "There is a structure, an installation, built approximately 4,000 years ago by a civilization known as the Xyloians." Richelieu frowned. "I have heard the name. They are gone." "Yes," Olin said. "Their system was among the first recorded to encounter a previous iteration of the wave." That word landed like a stone dropped into still water. "Previous." Richelieu pushed off the platform, attention sharpening. "Iteration." Olin inclined their head. "The data suggests the phenomenon we are observing now is not unique. It has occurred before." "How many times?" Richelieu asked. "We do not know." That was worse than any number. "What did the Xyloians do?" he asked. "They detected the wave before it reached their system," Olin said, "and they attempted to study it. They built a recording station, a sentinel, designed to observe the wave as it passed through their system, to capture its properties, its behavior, its structure, And then, if anyone survived, to transmit that data forward in time. Did it work? Olin's light dimmed. They did not survive to receive the transmission. Of course they didn't. Is the Sentinel still there? Richelieu asked. That, Olin said, looking at him with something that might have been the lumen equivalent of quiet desperation, is why I asked you here. A single gesture, and a new projection appeared. A distant system, dim and cold, marked with a faint signal. A beacon, still pulsing after 4,000 years of silence. If the data core is intact, Olin continued, it may contain the only direct observation of the wave's true nature. Not theorized, not modeled, observed. At the moment of contact, Richelieu stared at the projection. A dead system, a machine still waiting for someone to listen. You want someone to go get it, he said. Yes. Why me? Olin's colors shifted, something deeper now, more complex than simple curiosity. Because of what you represent, they said. A species that has already survived the unsurvivable. Multiple times. And then, for the first time, Richelieu heard something in a lumen voice that he had never heard before. Not fear. Something closer to what fear becomes in a being that has never previously had reason to feel it. We have built a civilization that does not break, Olin continued. And now we face something that may break it regardless. We do not know how to think about that. Their light dimmed slightly. We require a perspective that does. Richelieu looked back at the projection. At the distant dead system where a machine had been waiting longer than most civilizations had existed. A dead world. A recording of something no one understood. And a wave that had already erased everything that tried to study it once before. He felt it settle into place. You understand, Olin said quietly, that this mission is unlikely to succeed. Yes, Richelieu said. And you are still willing to go. He looked at the projection one last time. Then back at Olin. We have built our entire history on bad odds, he said simply. Give me the coordinates. Olin inclined their head. And for the first time since the wave had appeared in their data, something like hope entered the room. The ship was not impressive. The UEV Beagle was old, scarred, built to endure. Its hull was thick and uneven where replacement plating had been welded over older damage. Its engines were oversized for its frame, built for persistence over precision. It had survived 11 deep-field missions and 2 hull breaches and 1 navigation failure that should have stranded it forever in the void between stars. It didn't stop. Richelieu had always found that admirable. In the briefing room, he stood at the central table with Commander Petrie and Dr. Daffod Townsend and told them exactly what they were flying into. Retrieval mission, he said. We go to the Xylo system, 11 weeks in slip space. Locate a 4,000-year-old Xyloian installation called the Sentinel, extract its data core, and get out. Commander Petrie, who had never once in 7 years betrayed anything with her face that she had not consciously decided to put there, studied the map and asked, if the core is still intact. If it is still intact, Richelieu confirmed. Dr. Daffod Townsend was already pacing. He had been pacing since the moment Richelieu started talking. Quantum stasis could preserve the core, depending on how it was engineered, he said, his hands sketching shapes in the air. Xyloian systems were advanced for their era, but without maintenance for 4,000 years. There could be drift, fragmentation, signal decay. Doctor, Petrie said calmly. He stopped. Will the data be readable? He blinked once. Yes, he said. Then, a fraction of a second later, probably. Petrie accepted that. Richelieu had chosen these two precisely. Petrie saw the structure of a problem before it fully formed. Daffod saw everything else, including the things that hadn't formed yet and might never do so. The wave is approximately 6 months from the Xylo system at current propagation speed, Richelieu said. That gives us enough margin, but not generously. Enough if nothing delays us, Petrie said. Something will, Richelieu replied. She glanced at him. Not a question. A measurement. No rescue is available if we encounter difficulties beyond our own capacity to resolve, she said. Correct. Daffod had stopped pacing and was staring at the projected map. We are flying to a system that has already been through this process, he said quietly, to study a device that watched the wave arrive. He looked at Richelieu. You are sending a biologist. I am sending the person most likely to recognize something we do not understand, Richelieu said. Daffod considered that, then nodded. Fair. Petrie glanced at Richelieu one last time before she left. This mission has a low probability of success, she said. I know. And a high probability of no return. Yes. A pause. She held his gaze for precisely 1 second. Understood, she said, and left without another word. 36 hours later, without ceremony or assembled crowds or final speeches transmitted across the coalition networks, the docking clamps released. The Beagle hung for a moment between structure and vacuum. Then the engines engaged, not with drama, but with a steady, controlled burn that pushed it forward and away. The star shifted, the station receded, and with a subtle distortion that bent light without breaking it, the ship entered slipspace. Travel through slipspace was not darkness. It was absence. The external viewports filled with a dim, featureless gray, as if the universe had been reduced to its most minimal expression. No stars, no distance, no reference points, just a constant, low pressure that settled into the body and was felt more than perceived. Time stretched. 19 days into transit, Richelieu found Daffod in the lab, exactly where he expected him, surrounded by organized chaos. Data tablets stacked in unstable towers. Holographic projections layered over each other in slow rotation. Notes and half-formed ideas suspended midair like thoughts that hadn't yet decided what they wanted to become. His eyes were sharp in a way that meant he hadn't slept properly in at least 2 days. What are you working on? Richelieu asked. Daffod finally looked up. I am trying to understand, he said, why anything survives the wave at all. On the 23rd day of transit, the breakthrough came. Richelieu was on the bridge when the comm opened without preamble. Captain, Daffod said. His voice was steady in the careful way of someone holding something enormous very still. I need you in the lab. Now. The lab looked worse than before. More projections. More data streams layered over each other in dense webs of information that shifted and reconfigured in real time. At the center of it, a double helix rotated slowly in the air. Human DNA. Alongside it, a pulsing waveform. Deep violet. Familiar. Daffod stood very still in front of it. That was how Richelieu knew it was serious. I was wrong, Daffod said. Richelieu waited. About what the sequence is, Daffod clarified. He gestured, and a section of the helix expanded, its structure unfolding in layers that revealed far more complexity than a simple non-coding segment should have contained. It is not inactive. It is not regulatory. It is not structural in any conventional sense. He paused. It does not belong there. Richelieu's expression hardened. Not human. Not terrestrial, Daffod said. It is a retroviral insertion. Ancient. Older than any recorded human lineage. It integrated into the genome so completely, so long ago, that it became indistinguishable from native DNA. Every human carries it. Every sample across our entire biological record contains it. And we have been looking at it for decades without understanding what it was because we had nothing to compare it to. Until now, Richelieu said. Until now. Daffod gestured again. The violet waveform aligned with the sequence. Perfectly. When exposed to the wave's signal, Daffod said, this sequence activates. Not destructively. Not randomly. Specifically, Richelieu felt something shift, a quiet, precise movement of thought locking into place. Something cold. Something that felt significant in a way he was not ready for. Recognition, he said. Yes, Daffod said. Silence stretched between them. Then Richelieu asked the only question that mattered. Why? Daffod turned back to the projection. I did not know, he said. Not until I stopped thinking of the wave as a phenomenon. He expanded the waveform, breaking it apart into layers. Beneath the destructive energy signature, something else became visible. Structure. Ordered. Intentional. The energy output is just the surface, Daffod said. What we have been detecting, what is destroying biospheres, that is a byproduct. He highlighted a deeper pattern. This is the core. Even without understanding the mathematics, Richelieu could see it. It was not random. It was designed. The wave is not a weapon, Daffod said. Richelieu looked at him. It is a signal. The words settled harder than anything that had come before. A transmission, Daffod continued. Broadcast across interstellar distances using a carrier medium that passes through matter without resistance. It interacts with nothing. He tapped the highlighted DNA sequence. Except this. Richelieu's mind moved quickly. If it is a signal, then that sequence is a receiver, Daffod finished. Silence. Not empty this time. Full. Every human has it, Richelieu said. Yes. Which means, it is not just humans. Richelieu's eyes narrowed. Daffod brought up another dataset. Comparative genomic models from coalition species. Different structures, different evolutionary paths, different biochemistries entirely. But in each one, a pattern. Not identical, but analogous. A sequence that did not belong. Integrated so deeply it had never been questioned. In every complex life form the coalition had ever catalogued. Richelieu felt the realization settle slowly, like weight distributing across a structure not built to hold it. Every species, he said. Daffod nodded. As far as we can tell, every complex life form carries some version of it. That is not coincidence. No, Daffod agreed. It is not. He looked back at the waveform. The signal travels through the galaxy, he said. It passes through everything, planets, stars, empty space, without interacting with any of it. He paused. Until it finds this. Richelieu's voice came quietly. The lock, he said. Daffod's expression sharpened. Yes, and the wave is the key. The room seemed to contract around that idea. Not a natural disaster. Not a random anomaly. A system. Designed. Built. Operating on a scale that made civilizations feel like furniture. If it is activating something, Richelieu said, then what happens after? Daffod was quiet for longer than before. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. The data from affected systems shows total biosphere collapse, he said. Not just extinction at the macro level. Cellular breakdown. Structural failure across all complex life. Triggered by the sequence. Which means the signal is not just activating it. It is completing something. Richelieu exhaled slowly. Why build something like that, he asked. Daffod stared at the waveform. Because it is not meant to destroy, he said. The destruction is incidental. The function is something else entirely. He pulled up a larger model. Galactic scale. The wave's path traced across it. Not random. Not chaotic. Ordered. Deliberate. Moving through regions of space at intervals. Not continuously and not uniformly. It resets things, Daffod said. Richelieu shook his head slightly. It clears complex life, Daffod continued. Removes developed biospheres. Leaves the underlying planetary structures intact. Microbial life may survive. Basic ecosystems might recover over tens of millions of years. Richelieu looked at the gray systems behind the wave's path. Not destroyed. Emptied. It starts over, he said. Yes. Silence. Expanding. Heavy. A system that seeded life. Waited. Watched it grow. Then erased it. Repeatedly. Across the galaxy. Not as an accident. As a process. As gardening. Directed evolution, Richelieu said quietly. Daffod did not answer. He did not need to. Then Richelieu asked the question that changed everything. Why us, he said. If this system has been running for millions or billions of years, if it has cleared thousands of civilizations, why are we still here? Daffod's expression shifted. Not confusion. Realization. I wondered that too, he said. He adjusted the display, isolating the human sequence, then overlaying historical data. Earth. Extinction timelines. 5 major events. Each one mapped. Each one intersecting with anomalies in the sequence's behavior. It tried to activate before, Daffod said. Richelieu's eyes narrowed. What? 5 times, Daffod said. He pointed to the timeline. The Ordovician extinction, 445 million years ago. The sequence shows partial activation, incomplete. The late Devonian, 375 million years ago, same partial signature. The Permian-Triassic event, 252 million years ago, the strongest activation attempt, almost complete, but the planetary volcanism from the Siberian traps generated electromagnetic interference at exactly the wrong frequency and disrupted the trigger cycle at the final stage. The Triassic-Jurassic event, 201 million years ago, another attempt, interrupted by coinciding geological upheaval. And 66 million years ago, the Cretaceous-Paleogene impact. An asteroid strike generated a specific ionizing radiation burst on impact that the sequence read as a false completion signal. It initiated the shutdown procedure and closed the activation cycle before it could finish. Richelieu stared at the data. The planet, he said slowly. Too unstable, Daffod said. Too chaotic. Too full of completely unrelated catastrophes firing at random intervals. Every time the sequence started to respond, something entirely unconnected. A meteor, a supervolcano, a magnetic pole shift disrupted it. Richelieu felt it click. All of it. The extinctions. The survival. The adaptation. We were not supposed to make it through those, he said. No, Daffod agreed. His voice was almost a whisper now. We were not supposed to still be here. The ship continued forward through the gray silence of slip space. And for the first time since the mission began, the wave no longer felt distant. What happens if it tries a sixth time? Richelieu asked. Daffod hesitated. Just for a second. Then we may not get lucky again, he said. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Daffod looked up, and the expression on his face was not the one Richelieu expected. It was not fear. It was something almost fragile, something that comes just before a very large idea arrives. There is one more thing, Daffod said. Of course there is, Richelieu replied. The 5 failed activations, Daffod said slowly. They did not just fail. They modified the sequence. Each partial activation left a trace, a record of what it was attempting to do. 5 separate, incomplete cycles, each one altering the structure slightly. He brought up the comparison between the human sequence and those of other species. The others were clean, dormant, unchanged. The human sequence was scarred, fragmented, altered in ways that should have been purely destructive. And, Richelieu said, Daffod met his gaze. It does not just receive the signal anymore, he said quietly. Because of what was done to it, because of 5 extinctions that were never supposed to happen, the structure changed. And now it can do something no other version of this sequence in any species can do. Richelieu felt the shape of the idea before the words arrived. It can send a signal back, Daffod said. Silence. Absolute silence. A counter-signal, Daffod continued. Same frequency. Same structure. Inverted. If broadcast through the Sentinel's array at sufficient power, the wave would read it as completion, as if the activation process had already concluded successfully, and it would stop. Across the entire propagation front. Simultaneously, Richelieu exhaled slowly. Everywhere the wave exists, he said. Yes, Daffod said. All of it. Gone. The scale of it was almost impossible to process. One signal, one action, an entire galactic mechanism, ended. There is a cost, Daffod said. There always is, Richelieu said. The counter-signal would burn the sequence out completely, not just in humans, in every species that carries it. Permanently, and we do not fully understand what else the sequence does. It may be part of a larger biological architecture that we have never seen clearly because it has always been present, regulating development, influencing pathways, possibly guiding aspects of evolution in ways we cannot measure. Richelieu was quiet for a moment. We would be making that decision for everyone, he said, without asking, without time. Yes, Daffod said. The ship moved forward. The gray nothing of slip space pressed against the hull. And somewhere ahead, waiting at the end of 11 weeks, a dead system held the only machine that had ever watched this process complete. They came out of slip space without warning. Stars. Cold. Sharp. Unmoving. The Xylo system spread out before them. Dim. Lifeless. Its primary star casting a light that felt more like memory than illumination. Scan, Richelieu said. The returns came quickly. Planetary bodies. Residual energy signatures long since decayed into background noise. And then, Petrie did not speak immediately. That was how Richelieu knew something was wrong. What is it, he asked. She adjusted the display. Shapes emerged. Not random. Structured. Ships. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. They drifted in loose formations across the system's approach vector, scattered but not chaotic, as if they had arrived with purpose and then simply stopped. No power signatures. No movement. Just mass. Silent. From multiple origins, coalition species, unknown configurations, and one lumen vessel in pre-coalition design, aged 4,000 years. They all came here, Richelieu said. Yes, Petrie replied. Same reason we did. Yes. Daffod appeared in the doorway. A graveyard, he said quietly. Not a battlefield. Not wreckage from a single event. A collection. Ships from different eras, different civilizations, all drawn to the same point across 4,000 years of history. All stopped. All silent. No impact damage. Richelieu asked. Minimal. Most hulls intact. No evidence of external weapon discharge. Life signs. None. They just stopped, Richelieu said. They reached the system, Daffod said slowly. Got close enough to the wave's previous path. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Where is the sentinel? Richelieu asked. A faint signal pulsed from the second planet. Steady. Unchanged across 4,000 years. Plot approach, Richelieu said. The Beagle moved forward through the ghost fleet, threading between massive silent hulls, the navigation system calculating margins in meters, the crew saying nothing as they passed a Davari cruiser the size of a city, dark and intact and completely empty. Then Petrie said, Contact. Planetary shadow. Single power signature. Emerging now. The far side of the second planet rotated into view. And with it, something large. Angular. Deliberate. A Valta warship. All sharp edges and mineral geometry, its surface fracturing the dim starlight into cold, precise reflections. Its weapons arrays were active. Powered. Waiting. Registered to the Valta Zealot Order, Petrie said. Not coalition-aligned. Daffod's expression tightened. They are here for the same reason we are. No, Richelieu said. He was watching the ship's positioning. It had not moved until they entered the system. It had been waiting, not exploring, not investigating. Waiting. Specifically, they are here for us. The first shot confirmed it. Petrie reacted before the impact. The Beagle shifted hard to port. The beam grazed the shields and sent a shudder through the ship that Richelieu felt in his teeth. Shields at 90%. They have locked targeting. Evasive. Full maneuvering. The Beagle moved. Not gracefully, but effectively. It dropped, rolled, cut between two drifting hulls, using the ghost fleet as terrain. Another shot followed. Closer. Hot enough that sensors registered residual heat across the hull. Daffod grabbed a console. They do not want us reaching the Sentinel, he said. Petrie threaded the ship through a gap between two derelict cruisers, the margin measured in meters. They are larger, heavier, less maneuverable, she said. Then we do not fight them directly, Richelieu said. We move. Each shot was not aimed to destroy. It was aimed to push, to control their path, herding them toward the planet. They need us on the surface, Daffod said. Whatever they believe about the wave, Richelieu said, involves us specifically. Another shot. The Beagle dropped hard, skimming past the hull of the ancient Lumen vessel. The Valta ship came around the long way. Its size was its limitation, but it was relentless. Find me a stable descent path, Richelieu said. Basin near the beacon coordinates, Petrie replied. Flat terrain. Minimal obstruction. The Beagle broke from the ghost fleet and angled toward the planet. The Valta ship fired again, this time directly into the shields. The impact threw Richelieu against the console. The force reverberated through the hull like a struck bell. Shields at 60%. We cannot take many more of those. Then get us down. The ship entered the atmosphere. Friction built. The thin layer of atmosphere pressed against the hull. Behind them, the Valta warship held position, too large to follow into descent. They are deploying shuttles, Petrie said. How long until they reach the surface? Richelieu asked. 40 minutes. Less if they push. Then we do not give them that. The ground rushed up. The basin appeared, flat, open, unforgiving. The Beagle hit hard. Once. Twice. The second impact tore something deep within the ship. Then, stillness. Damage reports came in immediately. Hull integrity compromised. Port engine offline. Life support stable, barely. We are grounded, Petrie said. Flight capability is unlikely. Daffod let out a slow breath. So we are staying. Richelieu looked toward the horizon. The Sentinel's signal pulsed, a few kilometers away. Above them, faint against the dull gray sky, the first of the Valta shuttles began descending. Yes, he said. We are staying. The air outside was thin enough to make every breath feel deliberate. The sky above Xylo was the color of old ash, its star dim and distant, casting light that illuminated without warming. The basin stretched flat and gray in every direction, quiet in the way that places are quiet when nothing has lived in them for 4,000 years. The Sentinel stood ahead of them, smaller than Richelieu had imagined. After everything, the journey, the graveyard in orbit, the warship that had been waiting specifically for them, he had expected something monumental. Instead it was precise. A dark, ovoid construct partially embedded in the ground, its surface smooth and unbroken except for a single interface port and the faint, rhythmic pulse of amber light at its center. For 1,000 years of waiting, uninterrupted. Perimeter. Petrie's voice came through the calm. I see it, Richelieu replied. His security team established positions along the low ridges bordering the basin. The rest stayed close. On the horizon, movement. The Valta forces approaching. How long? Richelieu asked. 40 minutes, Petrie said. Less if they push hard. Then we do not give them that. Daffod was already at the Sentinel, the pacing and the scattered speech entirely gone, replaced by the other version of him. Focused, exact, unhurried in a way that was actually faster than hurrying. His hands moved with controlled precision across the interface port. I can read it, he said. The architecture is older, but familiar. Early Coalition exchange design. How long for extraction? 3 minutes. Take 2, Richelieu said. The coupling locked into place with a soft, mechanical click. The Sentinel's amber pulse shifted, brighter, faster, a resonance that could be felt through the ground rather than seen. Connection established, Daffod said. Accessing core. Richelieu turned, scanning the horizon. The Valta were closer now. 3 figures visible against the gray expanse, moving with the unhurried certainty of beings who believed the outcome was already written. They were not rushing. They did not need to. They believed this moment had already been decided by something older than either of them. The data began to flow. Not in images. Not in anything immediately interpretable. Structured information, compressed, encoded in formats designed for machines first and biological understanding second. Daffod's interface translated as it received. Fragments. Then patterns. Then, oh, Daffod said. The word was quiet. Not surprised. Not shocked. Something else. The word of a person who has just found the last piece of something they have been trying to understand for years and discovered that the completed picture is far larger than the frame they were using. What is it? Richelieu asked. Daffod stared at the data stream. His breathing had slowed in the deliberate way of someone holding a very fragile thing steady. It is a complete system, he said. Designed, engineered, purpose-built. And the wave is not the event, it is the mechanism, the delivery system. The Valta leader stepped forward. You see it now, it said. Its voice carried across the open air without amplification, resonant, absolute, carrying the particular certainty of a being who has spent its entire life inside an answer. Daffod kept going. The sequence is not just a trigger, he said. It is also a marker. The system tracks development, complexity thresholds, cognitive benchmarks, technological signatures. When a biosphere reaches a certain level, the next cycle begins. It is not random. It is selective. Richelieu's voice was flat. It decides when we have gone far enough. Yes, Daffod said. The implications settled in fully now. This was not maintenance. This was curation. Something, somewhere, was gardening the galaxy, planting, watching, and harvesting on a schedule no civilization had ever been permitted to know about. The Volta leader spoke again. Our makers purified our world, it said. They freed us from chaos, from uncontrolled evolution, from the inefficiencies of chance. Richelieu turned to face it fully now. And you think that is a gift? We know it is, the Volta replied. Behind it, the other 2 advanced slightly, weapons raised but not yet firing. Waiting, patient in the way of those who are certain they are right. They left us the truth. The cycle is necessary. Without it, life degrades, becomes unstable, inefficient, dangerous. Dangerous to who? Richelieu asked. To itself, the Volta said. Richelieu looked at the 3 of them, standing in the ash-gray basin of a dead world, weapons ready, defending a system that had ended every civilization that had ever tried to question it, and felt something harden in his chest. Not anger. Something quieter than anger, and more durable. You built your entire civilization around this, he said. Yes. Worshipping a system that kills you over and over again. It refines, the Volta replied. That is one word for it, Richelieu said. He looked at the leader, at the absolute certainty in its posture, at the way it held its weapon, not with aggression, but with the calm of someone doing what has always been done. He thought of 400 billion lives behind the wave's current path, of 12 silent systems, of 40,000 workers on a mining outpost who had not come home, of a research station that had stopped mid-sentence. He made his decision. You said this system prevents instability, he said. It does. No, Richelieu said. It prevents freedom. The Volta's light fractured sharply. Freedom leads to collapse. Sometimes, Richelieu agreed. but sometimes it leads to something no system can predict. Something new. Richelieu, Daffod said from behind him, urgently. What? There is something else in the data. A pause. Then Daffod said, quietly and very clearly. The counter signal is real. The structure is there. It is incomplete, damaged by the 5 failed activations, but functional in a completely different way. And I can initiate it through the Sentinel's array. The Volta leader took a step forward. Do not, it said. If we do this, Richelieu said to Daffod, not looking away from the Volta, there is no undoing it. I know, Daffod said. The sequence leaves every species. Permanently. Yes. And we do not know everything it does. No, Daffod said. We do not. Richelieu was still for a long moment. He thought about the council chamber, about the civilizations that had spent the hours since that meeting preparing for their own ending, about the Lumen, who had built 11,000 years of stability and now found themselves staring at something their stability could not address, about the Marin, trembling at the edges of their forms, about the Davari, enduring, because endurance was all they knew to do, about 400 billion people who had not known the wave was coming. He looked at the Volta. You knew, he said. Before anyone else understood what the wave was, you knew. You found the Xyloian records and you understood what they meant, and you chose to protect the system instead of the people it was designed to end. The Volta did not deny it. Our makers, it began. Were not your makers, Richelieu said. They were your engineers. They did not give you a gift. They installed a lock inside every living thing in the galaxy and kept the key for themselves. The Volta raised its weapon, and Richelieu made the last decision. Do it, he said to Daffod. Petrie's voice came through the calm, sharp, controlled, strained beneath the surface. Contact, multiple points, eastern ridge. The crack of weapons fire split the gray air of the basin, not from the Volta in front of them, from the ridgelines. Additional units, at least 8, had circled while the leader kept Richelieu's attention forward. They had planned this. They had been patient. And now they came. 3 of Richelieu's security team went down in the first 2 seconds, not killed, but pinned, forced behind the low ridge cover by concentrated fire from angles that had been calculated before they landed. The Beagle's hull took 3 direct hits in rapid succession. Emergency seals fired. Smoke began rising from the port engine housing. Richelieu moved. He did not retreat toward the Sentinel. That would bring the fight to Daffod. He moved left, drawing the Volta leader and the 2 with it toward the far edge of the basin, away from the machine, away from Daffod's hands on the interface, creating distance and terrain in precious seconds. Petrie, he said through the calm, moving hard across the gray ground. The ridge, southeast approach. Engaged, she said. Her voice did not change. There were 3 short bursts of weapons fire from behind him. Then silence. 2 of the secondary Volta units went down. The Volta leader fired at Richelieu. The shot passed close enough to feel a sharp displacement of air, a heat signature that registered through his suit. He dropped, rolled behind a low rock formation that was exactly too small for real cover, came up running again. Daffod, he said. 30 seconds, Daffod replied, his voice absolutely steady in a way that suggested he had simply chosen not to feel what was happening around him until the job was done. Connection is holding. 28 seconds. The leader closed the distance fast. Faster than Richelieu had expected. Volta were mineral and geometric, and he had misjudged their speed. It was on him before he could create more separation, its weapon raised, its form refracting the pale light into sharp, accusatory patterns. You are about to destroy the only true thing in the galaxy, it said. Richelieu looked at it, at the absolute conviction in its bearing, at the weapon pointed at him by a being that genuinely believed it was protecting something sacred. He felt something that was not quite pity and not quite contempt. Something in between. Something that recognized, without forgiving, that the Volta had been told a story long enough ago that they had become the story. The only thing I am about to destroy, Richelieu said, is a cage no one agreed to be born into. He bought 12 more seconds. Then the weapon fired. The shot struck him in the left shoulder. Not the center mass kill shot the leader had intended, because Petrie had put a precisely aimed burst across the leader's forearm at the exact moment of firing, degrading its aim by 4 degrees. 4 degrees was enough. The energy discharge tore through the upper left plate of his suit, and spun him sideways and dropped him to the gray ground of a dead world. And the pain was immediate and bright and clarifying in the particular way that pain clarifies things when there is no longer any time to manage how you feel about it. He heard, through the calm, from Daffod, 2 words. 2 precise, quiet, certain words. It's done. Then the world changed. Not with a sound, not with a flash, not with any of the drama that the moment deserved by every measure of narrative justice. The Sentinel simply sang. One note, perfect in structure, carrying within it the inverted architecture of a sequence that had been present in every living thing for longer than memory. It moved outward at the speed of light. Silent, invisible, unstoppable. Richelieu felt it pass through him. Not physically, but undeniably. A momentary pressure, a flicker of something that did not have a name and was gone before it could be named. The sky changed. The iridescence that had been building in the upper atmosphere, the leading edge of the wave, the thing that had traveled across the galaxy on a schedule no civilization had ever been told about, intensified, spread rapidly, and then met the counter-signal in a collision that produced no violence. Only reaction. The distortion rippled, paused. The wave encountered a result it had been designed to recognize. Completion. Resolved. Done. And then it came apart. Not in an explosion, not in a release of force, but in a quiet, systematic unraveling. The structure that had held it together dissolving, the carrier's signal losing coherence, the energy dispersing into the background of the universe as if it had never been anything more than potential seeking a direction it would now never find. The sky above Xylo cleared. The iridescence faded. The pressure vanished. And just like that, it was over. Silence followed. Not the silence of space. Not the silence of fear. Something complete. The kind of stillness that comes when a force that has been moving for a very long time finally stops. On the ridgeline, the remaining Volta units had gone still. Not in defeat, in something stranger than defeat. Their weapons lowered not because they had been forced down, but because the hands holding them had simply stopped knowing why they were raised. The leader stood a few meters from Richelieu, its crystalline form dimmed, its refractions flattened into something dull and quiet. Our makers, it said again. The word fractured this time. Quietly. The way something fractures when the thing it was built around is no longer there. No one responded. What could be said? The Volta had built their identity, their history, their purpose, their reason for every choice they had ever made, around a system that no longer existed. They had crossed the galaxy to protect a machine that was now silent. They had wounded people and destroyed equipment and played out their part in a story whose final chapter had just been written without them. Richelieu, lying on the gray ground with his shoulder burning and the thin Xyloian air cold against his face, watched the Volta leader and felt something he had not anticipated. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just the particular exhaustion of a thing that has cost exactly what it was always going to cost. Get him stable, Petrie said nearby, her voice even and efficient, already moving. Daffod appeared above him. His face was pale. His hands were still. It worked, Richelieu said. Yes, Daffod said. The sequence. Gone. In everyone. Already. Daffod sat down on the gray ground beside him, something that was very much unlike him, and looked up at the sky, which was now simply a sky. Thin. Gray. Empty of everything that had been building there. Every human. Every coalition species. Every complex life form we have data for. Clean removal. No observed physiological damage. He paused. In a generation, no one will know it was ever there. Richelieu was quiet for a moment. Then, good. Above them, in orbit, Petrie reported, the Volta warship is disassembling. Not exploding. Not breaking apart violently. Separating, cleanly, as if the forces holding certain of its systems together had simply concluded their function. The warship had been tuned to the wave's resonance at a fundamental structural level. And now the wave was gone. On the ground. The remaining Volta units sat where they stood or crouched or knelt. Not threatening. Not fleeing. Just present. In the wreckage of everything they had believed. Later, after the medical team had stabilized Richelieu's shoulder and the perimeter had been secured and the Beagle's emergency systems had been coaxed into maintaining breathable air pressure, the coalition frequency opened. Elder Olin's voice filled the calm the same layered resonance. But beneath it, something that had never been there before. not fear. Something that comes after fear when fear is no longer necessary. Our instruments have confirmed the collapse, Olin said. Across the entire propagation front. Every sensor array we have deployed, nothing. The wave is gone. Richelieu sat against the warm hull of the Beagle. Yes, he said. A pause. Measured. The coalition is in your debt, Olin said. Richelieu didn't respond to that. What you have done, Olin continued, without consultation, without consensus, without time, has altered every living system we know. The sequence is gone from every species we have data for. Our biologists are reporting a universal change. Another pause. That will require time to understand. Everything does, Richelieu said. Olin's voice softened, or what passed for softening in a being who had never needed to soften anything before. Every civilization in the coalition has lost something today, something none of us knew we carried. Yes, Richelieu said, and every civilization is alive to experience that loss, Olin said. That landed. They were alive. All of them. Not preserved in archives. Not encoded in genetic vaults. Alive. Present. Free to be confused and uncertain and afraid and hopeful and wrong and alive in the messy, unoptimized, statistically improbable way that life insisted on being when no one was managing it toward an outcome. A recovery fleet is already en route, Olin said. Our fastest vessels. You will not wait long. Good, Richelieu said. One last pause. Captain, Olin said. Yes. A fraction of a second. Welcome back. The channel closed. Richelieu sat there a while longer. Petrie came and sat beside him, her left arm bandaged, her expression unchanged from its normal state of quiet competence, which was the only way she ever showed that something had cost her. Daffod stood a little distance away, looking at nothing in particular, his data tablet held loosely in one hand and not being looked at. The Valta units were being tended by their own medical personnel who had arrived from one of the surviving shuttles. No one fired. No one spoke. There was nothing left to fight over. We made that choice for everyone, Richelieu said. Not a question. Yes, Petrie said. Without asking. Yes. He looked at his hands. Every living thing in the galaxy lost something today because of two people in a damaged lab on a ship in slip space. Daffod turned slightly. 3 people, he said. You said do it. Richelieu almost smiled. He looked up at the stars. Unchanged. Cold. Distant. Silent, as they had always been. Stars did not care. They burned and died on their own schedules and never consulted anyone about it. But the thing that had been moving through the space between them, patient, inevitable, ancient, designed, was gone. We survived because things went wrong, Richelieu said quietly. Every single time. The asteroid was not supposed to be on that trajectory. The supervolcano was not supposed to fire at that moment. The ionizing burst was a statistical event that should not have occurred for another 40 million years. 5 times, something that had no reason to save us did exactly that. Not because it was trying to, but because the universe is genuinely, irreducibly chaotic and no system, no matter how old and well-designed, can account for everything. Petrie looked at him. We are the accident that became a solution, Richelieu said. She considered that, then nodded once. That sounds about right, she said. He looked back at the stars. Now, finally, their own. No hidden mechanism waiting to decide when they had gone far enough. No ancient system deciding when the garden needed pruning. No key embedded in their cells waiting for a lock to turn. Just uncertainty. Real uncertainty. The kind that could not be predicted or controlled or engineered away. The kind that had shaped his species from the very beginning. The kind that, if you were honest about it, was the only reason any of them were still here. He felt it settle into place. Not as fear, as something else. Familiar. Right. Whatever came next would belong to them. Not to the things that had built the system. Not to the ones who had spent 4,000 years protecting it. To them. All of them. For better or worse. For the first time, by choice. And somewhere out there, past the recovery fleet now burning toward them through slip space, past the silent systems behind the wave's last path, past the 12 ghost systems and 400 billion lives that would never be returned no matter what had been saved today. Something that had built a galaxy-spanning mechanism and seeded life across thousands of systems and waited patiently through billions of years of cycles and resets had just encountered, for the first time, a result it had. Not programmed. A signal sent back. from the accident it had never managed to correct. Richelieu did not think about that. He was tired, and his shoulder hurt, and the recovery fleet was coming, and Daffod was already looking at his data tablet again, already thinking about the next thing, already moving forward. That was enough. For now, that was exactly enough.